Welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast. I'm your host, Tamiko Pugh, best-selling author, transformational strategist, life and business coach to purpose-driven women, and empowerment influencer. Affectionately called by many, the Empowering Diva. Each week, I'm bringing you inspirational conversations as well as actionable tips and strategies that move you forward in life and business. I believe that empowerment comes from within and can be achieved by honoring yourself, your values, and expressing your talents and gifts. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Now let's jump into today's episode of Living the Empowered Life. Welcome to another episode of Living the Empowered Life podcast. I'm your host, the Empowering Diva, Tamiko Pugh. In today's episode, I'll be chatting with empowerment speaker, high-performance life coach, and award-winning author Sheri Riley. Sheri spent 20 years creating marketing strategies for global superstars and companies like Usher, Converse, and Warner Media. Now, as an empowerment speaker, high-performance life coach, and award-winning author of Exponential Living, Stop Spending 100% of Your Time on 10% of Who You Are, she helps professional athletes, corporate executives, and entrepreneurs grow personally and dominate professionally. She speaks and trains at companies like the NBA, WNBA's Indiana Fever, the Coca-Cola Company, and JP Morgan Chase on how to implement her 9 principles of exponential living to enhance personal and professional development, leadership, and productivity. All right, Living the Empowered Life community, you have already heard her professional bio. Now let's go ahead and dive into our exponential conversation with empowerment speaker, high performance life coach, and award-winning author, Sheri Riley. Sheri, welcome to Living the Empowered Life podcast. How are you?
Oh, girl, I am empowered. I love the name. You know, my favorite word is power, empowerment. So I'm excited. I've been looking forward to our conversation for a while.
And so have I, and we have that in common. I love empowering women from the inside out, helping them to take their power back, because so often in life we experience adversities and challenges, you know, these things that kind of take our power away. And I feel like if we can empower women, you know, from the inside out, that's the best way for us to get that power back that's been taken away.
Yes, and yes.
Well, awesome. So I'm excited to dive into our conversation. And so outside of your bio, outside of you being an industry colleague, I've gotten an opportunity to get to know you over the past few years. We have a lot of mutual friends, and what I like to call, we run in that empowerment circle. And the other thing I like to say is we're about that life, that empowered life.
Yes.
So that's the slogan. We're about that life.
Girl, we're about that life.
That empowered life.
And you know what, Tamiko? It's so, you know, this message, your platform, your focus, my message, my platform, my focus is even more necessary right now. It's so interesting because, you know, I've been talking about peace as the new success for almost 20 years. But it's really now, especially coming off the year that we've had, that people that have known me for 15 years, 10 years, 12 years, they're calling me going, okay, girl, you've been so ahead of the curve, because now it makes sense. Empowerment living, exponential living makes sense, because you know, last year just really taught us that the most important things are the most important things. And so I love the work you're doing, and I'm looking forward to really diving into our conversation.
Yeah, so am I. And so, yes, let's talk about that. So peace is the new success. You know, as you were stating, last year was just different. Last year taught us what was important and what's not important. And for me, I realized that peace gave me, like, my peace is what gave me power. And you talk about the power of peace and peace being the new success. And so often we're ripping and we're running and we're here and we're there and we're going to this event and we're going to that event. And oftentimes it doesn't really serve your peace. And I felt like I was literally a hot mess running all over the place, doing all these events, but it didn't bring me peace at the end of the day. So, peace is the new success. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting. When I first started this journey of writing my book, Exponential Living, and a soror of mine, a good friend of mine, a sister friend of mine, I asked her, I said, I'm trying to get this vision together. I knew God had placed in my spirit that peace was the most important thing for me to focus on, that it was the answer, it was the conclusion, it was all things. But I just couldn't get clarity around the messaging. And so I asked her, I said, will you for a year commit one day a week, Fridays at 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. and just help me, like, be my vision partner, help me flesh this
Mm.
out. And so fast forward, this idea of exponential living, this idea of peace started as like 8 pages. And then we narrowed it down to like 4 pages. And then eventually it was like 4 paragraphs. And then I finally got it down to this one sentence. And it was about exponential living, and the definition of exponential living being pursuing peace, choosing clarity, and living courageously. And she said, Sheri, you know what? Everything about that is on task. Like you've got it. She said, except that word peace. She
Mm.
said, because peace is not possible. Peace it's just not possible. She's like, I live in New York, and now when I get in a yellow taxi cab, it's like, they've got advertisements playing. And she said it used to be I could get in a cab and it was quiet and it was silent. She was like, everywhere you go, it's just noise. So there is no such thing as peace. And honestly, Tamiko, that was a punch for me because, again, she had invested about 6 months of her time. I respected her opinion. I
Mm-hmm.
appreciated her insight, but I also knew God gave me the word peace, and He gave me that being the anchor and the answer. And so I left our session and I just spent time around this word peace. And what I realized is that no amount of money will ever give us peace. No amount of influence or impact, or to your point, moving around, moving, shaking, being the boss, making sure you're in the know, none of it will give you peace. For someone who's crashed and burned at the height of her career, none of that gave me peace. And that's when I knew that is the anchor to it all, because the only thing we can't get externally is peace. And I came back to her our next session and I said, you know what, Jackie? I said, peace is possible. Peace is our power, and peace is the new success.
Mm.
And in that moment, she said, oh my God, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. But here's the thing about it: what I know as the anchor was still elusive, because people were like, oh, peace must mean some kumbaya in the corner, or peace must mean everything is working great. And it's the exact opposite. Peace is when all hell has broken loose.
Yes.
The power of peace is when you're confused, when you are in transition. When you really focus in on the power of peace, it's that inner calm, it's that inner decision, it's that inner anchor that says, regardless of what's happening around me, I I am solid in me. I am solid in where I am, who I am, and whose I am. And I'm able to then deal with whatever is externally around me, whether it's being at your highest high or your lowest low. Because the other thing I'll add is peace is also being able to handle the success that we achieve. So many people I work with as a high performance life coach have reached the highest levels of success, and they're miserable,
Mm.
and they're miserable. And so that's the power of peace, meaning it is the only thing that is ours, that we own internally, absolutely regardless of what's going on externally.
That is so powerful. Like, I literally got chills as you talked about peace is the new success, as you were explaining what you told your vision partner. As soon as you said peace is power, I'm sorry, peace is possible. Peace is our power. Peace is the new success. I literally got chills. Like, ooh, I want to go to the Peace is the New Success retreat or something. Like,
Yeah.
can we get that?
Yeah. Working on it. Yes. Yes.
Yes, honey, we need that. I mean, it literally gave me chills. Um, and you said she was like, I get it. As you were saying that, I'm like, I get it.
Hmm.
I get it. And so when you position it that way, it's very, very powerful. And so this is a part of your whole, the whole exponential living. So how would you define that, and how did you come up with the concept? I know there's 9 principles of exponential living. So how did you come up with that?
Yeah. So, I'm a woman of faith. I don't put my faith on anyone, but I am anchored in the word of God, in my relationship with Christ. And I can't take any of the credit. Literally, back when I was working at LaFace Records, I tell people I resigned, or people come to me and say, "Oh, what made you resign from LaFace Records?" I'm like, I really didn't resign. I literally crashed and burned.
Mhm.
But
Wow.
that's really what happened. And when I crashed and burned, working at LaFace Records, working in my dream job, the first thing God gave me was He dropped in my spirit that I was spending 100% of my time on 10% of who I was. Then He said the journey out of that is exponential living, and it's through 9 principles. And that was it. I mean, Tamiko, He gave me that. And literally, I had to then go on that journey. It was a 12-year journey of, okay, well, what is exponential living? Through my vision partner, Jackie Lee, we were able to work through the process of exponential living is pursuing peace, choosing clarity, and living courageously. What are these 9 principles? Well, the 9 principles are the actual guide. They are the guide or the manual that literally fills that gap that stop spending 100% of your time on 10% of who you are. These 9 principles are the pathway from that 10% to that 100% living. And so over the course of those 12 years, I then had to honestly live out, what is that? How do you apply these 9 principles? How do you apply? How do you live them? How do you make sure that you're anchored in them? And so that's the core. Exponential living is a lifestyle of pursuing peace, choosing clarity, and living courageously. And the guide or the pathway to that are those 9 principles.
And the one principle that really resonated was the courage to be faithful. And I think it's the title alone, like the courage to be faithful, the courage, like it takes courage to be faithful to God's word sometimes. Sometimes we don't. And I remember, in the beginning of my career, I was really nervous about adding scripture and having a faith-based business. I remember I had a lady unsubscribe from my email list, and she's like, I love the content you put out, but you always talk about God. And so the courage to really be faithful and do what He tells you to do, it definitely takes courage. So that's what really resonated with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting with that because that's principle number 8, the courage to be faithful. And it's really kind of a play on words. God is so amazing, is because, your first thought is exactly what you said, the courage to be faithful. And you automatically think faithful to your faith, your religion, your
Mm-hmm.
God, your purpose. But the real depth of that principle, the courage to be faithful, is really the courage to be faithful to you, to the core of you,
Mm-hmm.
which is, we know, God, right? Because and really what it's centered on is our healing. Most people that I work with, whether it's through speaking or coaching or just, in my everyday existence, working with people, most of the time we don't have the courage to heal.
Mm.
And that's what keeps us from exponential living. So the 8th principle is the courage to be faithful. And the anchor of that is the courage to be faithful to our own healing. And here's the thing, as much as all of us have some level of trauma that we have to heal from, the majority of us also have to heal from things that weren't meant to harm us, weren't meant to damage us, or weren't traumatic. So, for example, my grandmother, when I was probably about 8 or 9 years old, And I was a very loquacious child. I talked a lot, go figure. And one day I said something, I said, I know exactly what it was, but I don't have to repeat it. But it was something about my aunt. Was it malicious? And my grandmother said to me, my God, you talk too much. I remember it like it was yesterday. And I literally said to myself, no one will ever say that about me again. No one will ever say I talk too much.
Wow.
Now, in that, I own that as a badge of honor. So I've never been a person to gossip. I ended up by the sixth, seventh, eighth grade. I was the one that all my friends came to. I've been a life coach my whole life. I didn't know it. They all came to me and everyone shared their most intimate personal stories. I meet strangers that will just sit down next to me at the gate of an airport and tell me their whole life story. And there's this trust that I have that people have with me, but also the trauma, the part of that I had to heal from is when God was calling me to become a speaker, because I spent 20 plus years as a marketing executive. When I resigned from LaFace Records, I then started a consulting firm that I had for 17 years. And so when it was time for me to transition to this next level as an empowerment speaker and high performance life coach, oh, Tamiko, I resisted with everything I had. Not because I didn't want to, but it was that small voice that was still saying, no one will ever say I talk too much. And so I was on a call with Les Brown and I was saying, Les, how there's something that just won't let me move in this speaking lane. Like I kind of tip my toe in it, but I won't move in it. And as he began to talk to me, I just started crying because I began to hear my grandmother's voice. So for 40 years, I was held captive to my true purpose, doing the work I'm doing now, having this conversation with you because of that one statement my grandmother said when I was 8 or 9. I didn't get free until I was in my 40s. And so everything that we have to heal from isn't always traumatic. Sometimes it's a stronghold. Sometimes it's a voice. Sometimes it's an environment. Sometimes it's a mindset that
Yes.
we have to heal from that's keeping us from experiencing exponential living, which is robbing us of our peace. So that courage to be faithful, I'm so glad you highlighted that. Because especially knowing your story and your path and your purpose and how you serve women, I think it's so important that we know we do have the external trauma that is so detrimental to us that we've got to heal from. But in addition to that, we also have that what we don't even know how to identify
Mm-hmm.
that's holding us captive from our purpose as well.
I agree wholeheartedly. And those are sometimes we call those limiting beliefs or those things that we've experienced or heard in the past or from an event. And so, as you talked about this, about talking too much, it makes me think about my grandmother making a comment. We always hear this growing up, money is the root to all evil.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that was keeping me from moving forward in my business and being able to make the amount of money that I was supposed to. So every time I would get to a certain level, I would stop and I would be afraid to do more. Living the Empowered Life was supposed to have been launched a long time ago, but I was like, well, what's going to happen? What if people really start to know me? What if this happens? And what are they going to say about me? What is the family going to say? And so I had this whole belief about money being the root of all evil. I had no idea that stuck with me ever since I was a little girl.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. Let me tell
whew,
you, my dad, I'm an only child born on my dad's birthday, right? If you open up the dictionary and you look for daddy's girl, you're gonna see my picture. Like I am that daddy's girl, right? And my dad has always taught me, baby, find what you love to do and you'll never have to work. From the time I could breathe, he's like, you're going to get a college degree. And, he just always had these extremely high hopes, high bars. You can do it. You can do it. You can do it. You got this. You can conquer the world. But I would also hear my dad say things like when my cousin would who had a college degree, who was, very successful in her career, I would hear my dad say things like, who does she think she is? And she thinks she's so smart. When she reached another accolade, he'd say, yeah, she gonna be hard to talk to now. And, I'd see him, watch certain people on TV, especially African Americans, and he'd go, they think they know it all. And so as much as my father spoke into me about all I could be, I also heard him have these caps on the people who were being all they could be, right? And so just like you, I would always get to a certain level in my career and I would start self-sabotaging, not even knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
I would start backtracking, or I'm fighting through it right now. I'm right at the breakthrough with some things I've been working on, and my energy is just low, and I feel foggy. And the truth of the matter is that's a remnant of that stronghold of right when you get to the finish line, there's things that just start holding me up. And I know that now. So now I can press through, but it's exactly what you said. I have to have the courage to be faithful enough to understand your family's going to love you regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, the more you achieve, the more you can help others.
Yes, absolutely.
The heart of who you are, Sheri, the heart of who you are, Tamiko, you will never be an egomaniac. The core of who you are will never think you're better than anyone else. This is what I have to say to myself, because it's that critical to talk down those strongholds, those limiting beliefs that we've carried along beside us. And you and I, honestly, we're on the blessed side because we recognize them. And that's why we're so humbled and committed to this work, because we want to help others recognize their own limiting beliefs, own voices. I'll say this last thing, but oh my God, I'm so passionate about this. Even with my youngest daughter, I'm always protecting the message that comes around her, especially from family. My daughter is lean. She's very lean. Mm-hmm. So, when my family members will say things like, oh my God, you're so skinny. I'll back that up immediately. Dominique, you are healthy. Dominique, you are an athlete. Because we don't understand. That's how we put those things that we have to heal from later. That's how we place them on our children. And so it's so critical what we say to our youth. When people say, oh, my baby, that 2-year-old son, especially a young Black baby, man, he's so bad. No, that baby's not bad. He's energetic. He's a 2-year-old energetic child. Or even with my husband, when my daughter, always inquisitive. And so Dominique was always, why is that, mommy? Why is that, mommy? And I'd have to sit my husband down because, he came from that school of thought of, sit down, be quiet, and don't say anything. But I was like, baby, do you understand? That's a brain processing. That's a brain processing. And so I had to really work with my husband even to not allow him to tell our baby to sit down, be quiet for no other reason. And that's what his parents did. And that's what their parents did. A child is to be seen, not heard. Mm-hmm. So now fast forward, we have a 14-year-old who's only gotten 1 B her entire school career, because she's that student that wants to learn, that wants to do the extra, that wants to go and meet with her teachers in advance. But if we hadn't been aware of that at 2 and 3, when she kept asking why, if God didn't give us that understanding, that's an inquisitive mind, not a mind to be quiet, but a mind to be answering the questions. So it's so important, especially in this empowered community, that we're mindful of the words, especially to those amazing, awesome, impressionable minds that are young and growing and developing.
Absolutely. That is so important. I'm so glad that you shared that, because so many of us experienced that growing up. We sit down and be quiet, stay out of grown folks' business, go sit on a porch. Like, I was very active. I love to talk. I love to dance. Go sit your butt down somewhere. So, right. And it's like, okay, I got to sit down. I got to be quiet. And then, once you become an adult and it's time to really speak, And to serve, that's when we get stuck because of those limiting beliefs. But thank God, for the ability to be able to push past all that and just keep going, because we have so many lives to impact. There's so many people who need to hear your message, my message, so many other people's messages. We can't be quiet.
Right. Right. Yes. Yes, yes, and yes. And especially for us as Black women, and really focusing on, as you do, empowering Black women. Because we have our what we hear in our home, like we just shared, and then we go out into the world, and the world tells us that we're too loud, we're too abrasive, we're too this and we're too that. And so we're constantly trying not to offend anybody at the expense of our own voice, at the expense of our own swag, at the expense of our own energy, at the expense of what we are and who we are. And so what happens a lot of times is we go way to the extreme just because we want to express ourselves. And then for those of us who aren't all the way at the extreme, we're constantly trying to justify who and what we are. And I just want us, especially as Black women, to just own who and what we are, our voice. My voice is heavy. So anytime I talk, it comes across as just loud and abrasive. And I've learned, you know what I do now, Tamiko?
Mm-hmm.
I start out like this. I have an amazingly deep and sexy voice. And I've had 3 surgeries on my vocal cords. So in order for me to get the words out, sometimes it's going to come across loud. Sometimes I'm going to be hoarse, but I'm always going to give you a powerful message. I just hit it on the top. Let's just deal with it on the beginning. Let's just hit
That's it right
it right
there.
out the box. You see what I'm saying? So now all of that energy, oh, she's loud. She did all of it squashed. I done told you, 1, I have a heavy voice. 2, I've had surgery on my vocal cords. So now you either going to feel guilty or you're going to celebrate me. But either way, you're going to shut up.
And we're going to celebrate you because it's a powerful voice. Your voice has power. I don't hear it as something that's loud, or it's very powerful when I hear you speak, and it captivates attention. And that's what we need. We need people to pay attention to you. And so that's what I hear. I hear power, and it's attention getting. And I'm going to pay attention and listen.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to congratulate you real quick. All right. So over the weekend, it was World Book Day. And your book, first of all, it's a global release, purchased all over the world, translated and published in 3 languages, right? English, Romanian. I was like, what? Romanian
Yeah.
and Vietnamese? Girl. I mean, that is amazing. And so next up is you have some French agents that are kind of finalizing a deal to have it published and translated into French. So congratulations to you on that. I think that is amazing.
Thank you.
How do you feel?
Oh my gosh. I will tell you, the hardest thing I've ever done in my life is write that doggone book. Like I shared, it took 12 years. It cost me almost everything. It was 7 years to get a publishing deal, 4 years to write the book proposal, which honestly is a glorified outline. But I was committed I wanted a global release. I wanted the message to really resonate with as many people as possible. Usher wrote the foreword. I wanted it to highlight some of the amazing people that I'd been on my journey with that represented those 9 principles. Ludacris is in the book, Will Packer, who's a producer, Nicole and Ari Parker. And then there's individuals that you may not know their names, but I wanted all of them to feel like I was doing everything I can to get this message to the world. And I highlight that because there's nothing wrong with self-publishing. I believe self-publishing and having a publisher, honestly, are the exact same thing, because you got to do the exact same work.
Right.
The only difference is you got to determine how do you want, start with the end in mind, as Stephen Covey says, right? And whatever the end result is, then tells you which path to take. And so for me, wanting that global release for the message, not for Sheri, but for the message. And so to be able to see, the Romanian version of it, the Vietnamese version, and having a company in France reach out and say, hey, we want to translate this into French and release it here in our native language. It's very humbling because, and again, I'm a woman of faith, because when I was broken, and God was calling me to write this book, he said, baby, if you can trust me, if you can be obedient in the broken place, when I could not write a word, and he had me call 3 women and ask them, will you pray for me? Because I can't pray for myself. When everyone told me no one is going to receive the message on a book about peace, when I was working 2 and 3 years to get Usher's schedule aligned just to get the forward written, when I didn't have a clue what I was doing, all of these things that said this cannot be done. To be here and able to celebrate World Book Day and have multiple versions of the book. The publishing company happy because the book is sold and still selling. It is humbling, but it feels amazing, Tamiko. It feels amazing, not necessarily because of the accolades, but because I pressed through the journey.
Yes.
And that's what we want with this empowered community, exponential community. We just want to show you that we're all we're doing is the same thing you're doing, and making the decision to keep pressing through. But I will say this, one of the most exciting moments for me has been getting an NAACP Image Award nomination for the book. I lost to Oprah, but if you're going to lose to Oprah.
Right.
And, the book receiving multiple Self-Help Book of the Year awards over the course of the time the book has been released. I will say that feels amazing. And I highlight that because it's okay to be humbled and grateful to God and allow yourself to enjoy the fruits of the hard work. I go back to the Bible saying, don't be so heavenly minded, you're, earthly good. And, sometimes we can, be so humbled with Christ that we don't own the blessings he's given us. And I believe we can have we can do both. We can be humbled and grateful and give him all the praise and all the credit and all the glory. And we can be happy and excited and feel the joy of hard work well done and hard work well received. So it feels amazing. It really does.
I'm proud of you. Congratulations again on that. And the NAACP Image Award nominee. I do remember when that happened. And so I'm just going to give you all your congratulations now.
Thank you.
But just thinking about those 12 years, that 12-year journey that you put into this, it's so well worth it at this moment. The people that you get to impact, the people that you get to influence, the lives that you get to change from those 12 years was so worth it. And oftentimes when we're in the middle of that, we're like, okay, which way do I go now? How do I do this? What's next? And I remember, I self-published my first book, but I was still scared. I was like, okay, nobody knows me. Who wants to buy a book about domestic violence survivorship? Nobody knows me. You know what I mean? I didn't have a platform really at that point. But then the book signing was sold out. And the one thing that happened was the college that I actually dropped out of because I was a teenage mom, that college actually used the book for their psychology class. And I got this huge royalty check one month. And I was like, who bought all these books? And it was my aunt. She posted it on social media and was like, look, the college that you dropped out of, they're actually using it for one of their programs. And so all the students have to buy the book every semester. And so that was like a blessing in disguise. And so I get to go back and, speak to that group on a regular basis. And so the work that we put in it, we have no idea how many people it's going to impact, who's going to need it, what they're going to need it for, and how it's just going to change their lives.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah. So many things. Oh my gosh. So one more thing I want to talk about because things keep popping in my head. One of the principles of living the empowered life is to uncover your life purpose. And I think everything we've talked about up to this point really reflects purpose and uncovering our life purpose through everything that we do. Do you think that do you think that everything that you've gone through up to this point has prepared you for your purpose?
Absolutely. Every second, every minute, every moment, every heartbreak, every celebration, every relationship, every time I have been disrespected, every time I have been celebrated, it all of it I'm using now, all of it I'm standing on now. I'm glad you asked that question because, you know, even the darkest, most embarrassing, traumatic moments, they're still impactful and a part of the story. They still are a part of who I am. And one of the things I learned working with Les Brown as a speaker is, there's telling your story and sharing your story so that it can impact others. And then there's telling too much, right? And so I've learned, how to um, not be embarrassed. When I tell people I've been broke and broken, I mean that. Like I've been broke and broken. When I share with people that I was homeless, when I started this journey of exponential living and writing this book and launching myself as an empowerment speaker and high performance life coach, I was homeless. My husband and my oldest daughter was living with his mother and his parents, and me and my youngest daughter were staying in a good friend of mine's spare bedroom and hotel rooms. And that hasn't been that long ago. It was just when I say this book cost me everything, this journey. But here's the thing, Tamiko, that's when I launched Exponential Living. I was literally homeless, had my first masterminds at the Buckhead Library. No one knew I was homeless.
Wow.
And I'm literally helping high performers. I'm helping and coaching and masterminding. I'm writing this book. And there's so much of what I do now that was uncovered and birthed. The Bible talks about how, the anointing, that breaking of the stone. And so I am that living testimony that the best of my times, being at the highest highs, building, a very successful financial career as a corporate executive, building a multi-million dollar business as an entrepreneur, crashing and burning from that amazing corporate job, making decisions that put me in the place where that whole company, the financial bottom of it fell out. And then moving into this season where now I'm doing it all again in a third reiteration of who and what I am. All of that is my purpose. And here's the thing, what that time of building, when I closed my business after 17 years and really started from scratch doing the work I'm doing now, during that season is when I spent some of the most phenomenal time with my daughters. During that time is what really helped my oldest daughter become the 22-year-old woman she is now, creating the foundation of my youngest daughter and who she is now. So even in what we may look at as, oh my God, I wasn't quote unquote making money, but when I look back, that was the best time for me as a mother, for me as a daughter. My dad had just passed, what I had to do with his estate. It was all of these things that had nothing to do with work that I genuinely grew in, that I stand on now. So that's why, again, go back to, if we can press through, if we could press through, guys, if you don't get anything else from all of these words that Tamiko and I are sharing today, the one takeaway that I want you to get is the courage to be faithful to the process, the courage to keep pressing through, the courage to cross that finish line, even when you're blindfolded, even when you're in the dark, even when you're in the fog, even when you're on that floor crying your heart out, press through, press through, because all of it is going to be used for your purpose. To your original question, all of it will be used for your purpose.
Whew, girl, that was that was a lot of power right there. That was a lot of power right there. And as we get ready to kind of close out, it takes me to Romans 8 and 28. You know, all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. It says all things, not some things, not the good things or what we want to pick out, but all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord, who are called according to his purpose. And so all those things, like you said, eventually they lead to our purpose. And the one other thing, as you were speaking, you know, thank you for sharing your story too. Thank you for being transparent. I believe that it is in our transparency that we get to help other people and breathe hope into those people who are possibly going through what we were able to overcome. But when life feels like it's unraveling and it's just things are out of order, that's when we know that God is going to make it new. He can and he will make it new. We just have to allow him to take us through that process.
Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, that part, that part.
So, Sheri, we talked about a lot today. This is Living the Empowered Life podcast. So, what does it mean to you to live an empowered life?
Peace, 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 and peace. I will tell you, like I shared, I have been financially blessed and living the highlight. You know, every event you can imagine that people want to be at, Super Bowl, Grammys, Oscars, you know, you name it. I've been there. I've done that. And like I shared, I've been homeless. I've been broke. I've been broken. I have been at seasons in my life where I had to take the coins out of my coin jar and ask my mother if she would roll them up just so I could have the $200 I needed to pay for my daughter's um, summer camp for that week, right? And in all of those places, being at the highest high, being at the lowest low, being single, being married, all of them, the only thing that genuinely was my lifeline and what anchored me and gave me everything I needed was peace. Everything I needed was peace. And so when I truly think about an empowered life, living an empowered life, for me, it is doing everything I can to hold on to own and to live in my own peace. I can do anything after that.
Absolutely. And I, like you say, yes, yes, and yes.
And yes.
Yes. Sheri, do you have any upcoming events or any initiatives you'd like for us to support or that we can support?
Well, I have one that I am working on and finalizing called Power Broker Academy, which that piece is the new success retreat you talked about is a component of that. That is gonna we'll have more information about that later in the year, but you can definitely follow me and continue to be a part of my exponential living community at sheririley.com. SheriRiley. Please follow me on Instagram at Sheri Riley, and then also YouTube and LinkedIn. YouTube is Sheri Riley, and then LinkedIn is sheririley.com. And the .com is spelled out. So SheriRiley.com. And for any and everybody that would love to purchase a copy of Exponential Living, you can get autographed copies at peaceisthenewsuccess.com. Peaceisthenewsuccess.com. And then the hardcover, the ebook, and the audiobook are also sold everywhere books are sold.
Thank you so much, Sheri, for sharing with us today. I took away a lot of great nuggets from our conversation. I look forward to supporting you. Thank you so much for sharing with Living the Empowered Life community.
And thank you. I'm so honored and so happy to be able to have this conversation with you. You know, I've said privately to you, but I want to say publicly just how much I respect, I honor, I appreciate you from the very first moment we met through our mutual friend. You have been nothing but grace, kindness. We've been at weddings together. We have been at book events together. And at every turn, you are just such the epitome of grace and power. And I thank you. And I'm so grateful to share this opportunity with you.
Thank you, Sheri. Thank you for tuning in to another powerful episode of Living the Empowered Life podcast. I hope that you enjoyed my amazing conversation with Sheri Riley and that you were able to draw some inspiration as you continue your journey of living an empowered life. And remember, in the words of Sheri Riley, stop spending 100% of your time on 10% of who you are. Ladies, it's time to identify and live your life purpose. It's time to live life according to your values. It's time to set goals that move you forward in life and business. It's time to unleash your confidence. It's time to fearlessly walk in your authentic power. Ladies, it's time to live the empowered life.